I'm ready.
My name's Kyle Murray. I'm ready. My name's Kyle Murray. I'm 43 years old. I accepted Jesus around the age of 8. I remember doing it in my bed one night. I was raised in church, and I feel like in high school I had a good relationship with the Lord. Like I really, I was a real straight-laced kid. I didn't cause my parents any trouble, and I was baptized at 17 because of anxiety. I accepted early, but it took me a long time to get there. And then around the age of 19, I moved out of my parents' house, and I started. I guess I met the wrong people, and I started dabbling in drugs. And it started out innocently enough, where I thought, I'm a Christian. It's okay. Like it's just a little sin. It's no big deal. And it progressed into a 17-year drug problem with 12 years of depression, and it just destroyed my life and almost took my life. And so when I was 22 years old, I got married, and this whole time, like dabbling in the sin, I just was able to convince myself that that I was still a good person, that what I was doing wasn't terrible, because I knew what I believed, even though I wasn't honoring God, and it just progressed where I wasn't listening at all, and I became the prodigal son. I got married, and we decided that we just kind of did what we wanted. Like it wasn't a free for all, but my wife was like, "Well, if you want to do drugs, it's okay. Like I'll drink," and that didn't work. Around the age of 24, I would say I started to get depressed. I hated my job, and I was a bartender slash waiter, and it just made me miserable. And I think that's when I just started like seeking. Using drugs as a way to make my life find some sort of happiness. Like I was empty, and I used it to pacify my feelings, and that kind of morphed into like my whole life became a search for earthly happiness. It didn't matter if it was drugs or concerts or women or travel. It had to be the next high. I just was in search of the next high, and without that upcoming prospect of something to do or being able to get high at home, I was miserable. And during this whole process, I felt the pull of the Lord to go back. I knew where to go back to. I was just in denial, and I refused, and I would ignore those thoughts. And we ended up. My ex-wife was a traveling nurse, and we ended up in California. And in California, I met other people, and I got into harder drugs to where I was doing cocaine almost daily towards the end of my marriage. And and I would have told you that I was going to be married forever on a Thursday night in 2015 in August, and or a Wednesday, and I came home on Thursday, and my wife said, "I don't love you anymore. Relationship's over, and I haven't loved you for a while, and we're done." And even though I knew it was coming, and my family knew it was coming, just been in denial. I was a selfish person that, like, again, viewed myself as not as much better than I was, and that the lies and the things that filled my life weren't what they really were. I was just completely out of touch with reality, and I was a selfish husband, and I thought I was good, but it was all about me, and it was all about whatever made me happy. And so after she told me that, I went to go stay with my sister for a week, and I came back to my house in Sacramento, and my ex-wife had come over, and when she came over, my first thought, I'd already been suicidal. I mean, I was probably 10 years in depression at that point. I started taking antidepressants, I would say, in I think 2007. And so I had made threats before, but it was just really a cry for help. And I was prescribed Ambien to sleep, and I grabbed my bottle of Ambien, and I told her, "I'm going to take these." And she looked at me and she said, "You're a coward. Go for it." And I did, and I swallowed the whole bottle. And God saved my life because I never passed out. I mean, I was a seasoned drug user, and my body tolerated, and I never lost consciousness. My intent was just to go to sleep, and I was never going to wake up. But God sent my friend, who has never showed up at my house unannounced in his life, to my house about 30 minutes after I took a bottle of pills. And as he was walking up, my ex-wife was leaving, and he said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, Kyle took a bunch of," or she said, "Kyle took a bunch of pills, so it'll be okay." And my friend walked in and said I was laying on the bed, and he slapped me in the face, and I didn't even flinch. And he's like, "I think we need to call 911." And even though I never lost consciousness during this day, I don't remember anything more than about 15 seconds. I don't remember any of that happening. I tried to escape the hospital. They had to strap me to the bed. I woke up. I'd been 5150'd, and I was in a psychiatric ward. I spent 3 days there, and my parents, my friend Bill had notified my parents, and they flew up. My mom was devastated, and I was just so numb to reality. Even though I could see her broken, and I felt for her, but I had no feelings for myself. I couldn't empathize because I was, I guess, somewhat disgruntled that it didn't work. But at that moment, I realized that I couldn't do that again, that I had to learn to live, that I was not going to do that again. I was not going to do that to my parents. And it didn't stop me from pursuing the things I was pursuing. In fact, it probably amped it up even more because I was broken, and I didn't want to feel anything. And so that was my go-to. When the moment I started feeling, I was on the phone to get my next high because I wasn't going to allow that. And in 2017, after my wife and I had divorced in 2015, she made a lot of money. And in California, it's 50-50, and I got a large settlement. And in 2016, I spent about $100,000 partying. I have not a thing to show for it. And all the people that were in my entourage were there because of what I was providing them. And as I started to pull away, I have no contact with those people. It wasn't by choice. It's just because that life, they didn't want to be a part of my life if I wasn't providing what I was providing. And 2017, I did my taxes. I had $20,000 in credit card debt, and I owed the IRS $11,000, and didn't have a dime to my name. I didn't even have enough money to pay for gas. Even though I was getting a large monthly check, I was living paycheck to paycheck, and to the point to where I was calling my mom like, I need $200 because I can't get to work, because it was all just disappearing. And my mom and dad talked, and she called me and she said, "Why don't you come live back home and get your life back in order?" And I knew that there was I knew at that moment, I knew that I could not continue to do drugs. I'd lost everything I owned. I'd lost friends. I'd lost all my financial stability. I had lost my mental well-being. I was just broken. And so I decided I was going to stop doing drugs, and I moved home, and I started going to church with my parents at First Baptist Rockwall, where I used to go to church. And it was kind of at that moment that God started to change my life and change my heart. And the depression just slowly went away, and it took some time, but I weaned myself off my pills, and I was like, I don't need this anymore. I'm done. And I had some guys at work that I was engaging in spiritual conversation with, and even though I was still drinking and I was still doing other things, I was growing, and I was getting closer and closer. And I met a woman, and we got engaged. And 10 days before we got engaged, the engagement fell apart, and it broke me again. And all the things that I'd been faced with, that I pacified my life with, were thrust right back in my face. I mean, I had a woman offer me cocaine one night in a scenario that should have never happened. It shouldn't have happened. And I knew like this can't be, like, I can't do this. Like, this is Satan's trying to suck me back into this life that I'm trying to get out of. And I remember my dad told me, you want to know how to make all these things stop, is stop doing the right thing and he'll leave you alone. But you're trying to do the right thing, and that's why all this stuff's coming up. And so I just, instead of doing what the old Cal did, which was dive into drugs and alcohol and party, and I decided to go the route of the Lord. And I used to be a big heavy metal music fan, and I just found myself, like, I started listening to Christian music because that's where I found peace. And that Christian music progressed into me listening to sermons at work. And I just started to grow, and God started softening my heart, and he started taking things away from me. And I started making the right decisions. And then, at one point in the midst of my turmoil, I remember I looked a doctor in the eye, and he asked me what my future was, and I told him there is no future. If it wasn't for my parents, I'd walk out of here and kill myself right now. And I was 100% serious. And I remember that this doctor, who saw mentally ill people all the time, I shocked him. You could see the look of shock on his face, because he knew, like, he could see that I had no hope. And the way Jesus changed my life, and the hope that he's given me, I'm a man that wakes up happy every day. I have a family. I have a son that was just born. These things were all things that the devil told me were not possible for me. He told me that your life is done. You're a loser. Like, you've ruined everything. You've ruined 2 relationships. You have no hope, Kyle. You will not have a family. You will not have any of these things. And he's a liar. And Jesus has just restored my life. And I continue to grow every day with him. And I know I'm forgiven. And the terrible sinner I used to be seems like a man of the distant past. I'm still a sinner, but I'm a repentant one. And I'm one who's growing and who's blessed. And every day my relationship gets better with the Savior.